Hello, and welcome to a new video. If you are new here, hello, nice to meet you. I'm Smriti. If you are old here and you've seen me before, hello, welcome back. I am here to talk to you about non-fiction books, as to how to read them if you are new to the genre, and also to give you some book suggestions. So these suggestions will work even if you have read from the genre before, but also if you are new to the genre, these are beginner friendly books which I think will work for you. But what I'm also going to do is give you tips as to how to get into the genre, and why I'm doing all of this, by the way, just to give you like a little bit of a background, is that in November is like it's the month of non-fiction November. So in the bookish world, it's a month where we try to read a lot of non-fiction. Now, I don't know, I don't really like to have like 1 month dedicated to things because I have a lot of other things going on in this month right now, and I probably am not going to read a lot of non-fiction. But if this is going to be the impetus for you to want to read more non-fiction this month, or like start reading non-fiction for the month, I'm here to help you out for that. So I'm going to give you some tips for said reading non-fiction thing, and then recommendations, as I said. So let's just get into the tips. But before we get into the tips, I do have to say that I have an entire playlist called like Help You Read, which like I am going to be a little repetitive about these things, but like it has some great videos about how to read faster, and also about like tips to read just in general. And then I think my piece de resistance is book recommendations based on like other hobbies that you may have, which is going to be very correlated to like a point that I'm going to tell you. But yeah, I think that it is great. So I would definitely tell you to check that out, because I've recommended books based on music or sports or watching TV and just being a couch potato. So like, check it out, is all I'm trying to say, if you haven't already. Anyway, next, let's move on to the tips. And for tip number one, my number one tip is to see and understand that reading is essentially a form of entertainment. So let us try to then identify the other forms of entertainment that you enjoy. So, as I said, if your other hobbies or forms of entertainment are, for example, music, if that's something that you're super into, then maybe you could check out books about music or memoirs. For example, if you are super into like rock, then like there's a new book come out by Dave Grohl, which is his memoir, called The Storyteller, which I am really excited to read personally. Which like, yeah, I'm super excited about that. If like movies might be your thing or comedy is your thing, then maybe check out memoirs of like comedians. They've written a lot of books, and a lot of them are generally really good. If I don't know, art is your thing, there are plenty of books on art and artists and their lives and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I would say just dwell into that as well, which is basically find a hobby and then read books which are adjacent to that. That's basically the whole idea of this. The second thing is to find topics that you are really interested in. So for example, if you are super interested in mental health or like the feminist movement or politics or like Kashmir or like what is happening with healthcare or whatever, like something that's really like interesting, or like entrepreneurship even, there are so many books about all of this. So yeah, definitely like see what is adjacent to any of the hobbies or interests that you may have, and then pick up books according to that. My third tip, which is my most important one before I get into the other ones, is DNF a book if you are not interested. And DNF stands for do not finish, or like, yeah, do not finish the book. If you are reading a book and you are not gelling with it, keep it down, move on to the next one. Even if it's like, if it's a really shitty book, never come back to it. That's fine. If it's like, oh, I'm not really like in the mood for this right now, keep it down, move on to another one. You don't, like, for example, if you're watching a TV show and you're not gelling with it, you're not just going to force yourself to watch it, right? You move on to the next one, and like, we're not getting along with that one as well, you move on till you find something that is actually working for you. That's how you deal with books as well, and that's how you should do it. So do not feel guilty about the fact that like, oh my god, this book is loved by so many, I should love this too, which is why I should read this and I should continue reading this. If like I'm still not liking it. Just let it go. And all of this may sound extremely expensive to you, so I have your tip number 4, which is to sample books. Now you can sample books at home with Kindles. So for example, like you go on to Amazon and you basically ask for a sample of the book, so you can read like the first few like chapters and like pages of the books to kind of see like if you're gelling with it or not, and if you are, then you can buy the actual copy. Or you can go to a bookstore go to an indie bookstore or any bookstore, and then just read a few pages while you're there. Just sit down with like a couple of books and just like start reading a few chapters, see what you think of it. If you're gelling with the writing and like want to read further, then buy the book and then read it. If not, well, it's fine. And while you are there at that indie bookstore, hopefully, that comes to my tip number 5, which is to get recommendations. So hopefully you're at a bookstore which has like people who read, and hence will be able to help you with like recommendations. If not, then get on to platforms such as Goodreads or Storygraph or Follow Me or follow like a bunch of other people who are talking about books, and see what they have to say. I would always say like check out reviews of these books well in advance. See what these reviews have to say. Don't look at just the star rating. Look at like what people are saying about each book as well. I think that is also important. And then make a decision. It's like buying any other like thing, right? Like you always see what people have to say about the product and then buy the thing. So that's, it may sound like logical things, but I feel like sometimes you should have to say these things. You know what I mean? And my 6th one is to engage with people. Now, this may be you just putting it up on your like stories or whatever, saying that, hey, I'm reading this book. These are some of the insights that I've gotten, or like engage with a buddy read, like you have another friend who may be also interested in something like that and read, and like have that sort of engagement throughout. If you know someone who has already finished the book in the past, then you can like message them or whatever and be like, hey, this is what I thought, this is what I'm thinking while I'm reading this book, what were your thoughts? And then this exchange of ideas just keeps you more engaged with the contents of it. You can also like have something else that is going on side by side. For example, if it's a true crime thing, then maybe if there's a podcast about this, then you can also check that out. So just like keep yourself engaged in the topic and in the book itself, and you'll just find yourself more willing to read the book, and more willing to yeah, that's basically it. Those are the tips that I have for now, which I think will help you get into it. If you check out the other whatever videos that I've made, which will help you with like how to read faster and all of that sort of stuff, you can check out those tips there as well, and then just put them all together, and together we are Captain Planet. No, I'm kidding. We are Captain Nerds. I don't know what we are. You know what anyway, I'm just gonna get into the recommendation bits now. Yeah. Alright, on to recommendations. I'm going to keep this super quick because I don't want this to be a long video. But the first recommendation that I have is based on the first tip that I gave you, which was to read books based on things that are interesting to you. And what is most interesting to me is Trevor Noah. I just think that he is so smart and such an awesome person. He is the host of The Daily Show, in case you don't know, and is a comedian, and he is just generally awesome. I have the biggest crush on him. I hope that one day we will marry and just be very happy together. If not, then just be best friends. But yeah, I've recommended this book before, sort of, but I will definitely recommend it again, and again and again and again, because it is so good. It is basically about his experience growing up, because he is South African and he was born during apartheid, which is basically when the whites and the blacks could not mingle, but his father is white and his mother is black, and basically he was born a crime, and it's basically about his life. I said basically a lot, but yeah, it is so good. He is so witty, so smart, and just the way that he's written this book is absolutely amazing. Would definitely recommend. So beginner friendly, and you will definitely fall in love with him after you finish reading this book. However, I do want you to note that he is mine. so get in line. The second book that I would like to recommend to you is Shoe Dog, which is the memoir of Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike. And this one I really loved because, again, I really liked the way that he wrote this book. I thought that it was very engaging. He took you through his life and how he started Nike, and it was kind of almost told in this very engaging way, which almost felt like fictionalized, but you could also kind of see how passionate he is about his company and how it all started and all of that. I just thought that it was such a well written book, but also so beginner friendly. Would definitely recommend. It's also so inspiring to see how Nike, this brand that is just on the tip of everyone's tongues, how it became to be what it became and what those processes were. So yeah, definitely recommend to people who want to be inspired, but also just such a good read as well, just in general. Now, sticking to memoirs, but on a different note, if you remember, my second tip was on topics that might be very close to your heart. One that is very close to my heart is mental health, and which is why I would love to recommend I Have Never Been Unhappier by Shaheen Bhatt. Now, Shaheen Bhatt, if you don't know, is the sister of Alia Bhatt, the daughter of Mahesh Bhatt, who are very famous people in the Bollywood industry. And she has struggled with mental health her entire life. And she sort of writes about her journey with that to try to explain to you what that might look like on a day-to-day basis, and just what mental health and why that's so important and all of that. It's very short, this book, but it's so visceral and real. I really loved it because it really gave you just an understanding of what it might look like with just it was very real. I really liked it because I got to see myself in the pages as well. But if you want to understand mental health, or if you want to see yourself in the pages, then this is a book for you. And it's also very short, and very well written, so definitely recommend that. And moving on to, still sticking on to the mental health thing, I would also recommend Matt Haig's Reasons to Stay Alive, which is also about his mental health journey, where he talks about his own mental health journey, but he also talks about mental health as a thing in general. Definitely trigger warnings for suicide ideation and suicide attempts and all of that sort of stuff. But what I really liked about this book was just how simple it was. It's short-ish, but it has these things where okay, he tells you about his life, but he also gives you lists of things that you can do, for example, if you're not feeling so great, or things you can say to a person who's struggling with mental health issues right now, struggling with depression or struggling with anxiety, what you should or what you should not say. These are things which I thought were so important, and would really help a person who's trying to understand this topic better. And yeah, I just really liked it for what it had to say. So would definitely recommend that one as well. Another topic apart from mental health that I am super passionate about is feminism. And one book which talks about feminism in the Indian female context is this book called Chup by Deepa Narayan, which I read a couple of months ago with my book club. And I thought that it was a very eye-opening and very beginner-friendly read. It's basically about 7 habits or characteristics that women in India have, which everyone kind of may or may not have at varying degrees, but it was very eye-opening in terms of how we are so ingrained to have these habits and characteristics within ourselves, and it's good to call that out and be more aware of that, so that you can work towards making it better. I don't know if that made sense to you, but I just thought that it was really well done in terms of pointing these things out. And again, I felt it was very beginner friendly, and very easy to read. And yeah, definitely recommend, not only for the women but also the men. I feel the men need to read this book as well. From feminism to gender studies, a book that I loved recently is called Beyond the Gender Binary by Alok Ved Menon, and they are a poet and just an amazing person who are also non-binary, and they talk about being non-binary in this world and what that means and going beyond that. And what I really loved about this book is it's so short. It's maybe like 90 pages, but it gives you like an understanding of not only like their story and like small instances from their lives, but also like all the rebuttals that they have to face. Like, for example, what is the gender binary? Isn't there always supposed to be men and women, and why is there non-binary? So all the questions that you may have about like non-binaries, or like if you're a person who supports like just generally like the freedom of expression that people might have, but you get questioned about it a lot, in terms of like when you may bring it up, and you don't quite know the answers to certain things, they have legit just like answered it all. Like, it's like I know that this might come up, hence 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's just so well done in terms of just like general like logic. But also, yeah, I just really liked the way that all the thoughts were put across, and done in this super concise way, which will educate you and make you understand things at a better level, because I know that sometimes we're not the most educated with regards to this. So yeah, it's really good. Would definitely recommend. Definitely check it out. The next book that I want to recommend to you is a book that I was really, really intimidated by. I read it just this year, and before I read it, I was just like, yo, this is going to be such a difficult read. I need to gather everyone to read this, and I was so intimidated by this for years. And then I read it, and I was like, oh, this is actually like really simple to understand, and like it's great. And that is Annihilation of Caste by B.R. Ambedkar. I know, like, if you're like, you're just like, are you sure, Smriti? Are you sure that's beginner friendly? And I would say yes. Especially if you read the Navayana collection. The Navayana is a editor, no, not editor, it's a publisher that has published the book. There are two parts of it. The first part is the Arundhati Roy part. Don't read that first. Just straight away jump into the book by like the parts which is Annihilation of Caste. And I just thought that the editor has done such an amazing job of giving you like these footnotes, so many footnotes, but like these footnotes were amazing because it gave you so much of like context of like what was happening, and just it's really simply done, because essentially this was supposed to be a speech. The Annihilation of Caste is actually like a speech that Dr. Ambedkar wrote, which he was supposed to say out loud to people, and then he sent like the speech in advance to the people organizing it, and they were like, oh, maybe this is a bit like much, can you like cut it down and like say other things maybe instead? And he was like, nope, I'm gonna say this, or I'm not gonna say it at all. And they were like, okay, then maybe we're gonna have to cancel. And then he was like, fine, you know what, I've written the speech, I'm gonna just publish it as a book. And that was it. It's like 100 pages, and it's brilliant. It's really amazing. It's so eye-opening. Definitely check it out. I feel like everyone should read this book. So yes, it is beginner friendly. Don't get intimidated by it. It is great. Would definitely recommend. The next book recommendation is a book set in South Asia again, which is The Remnants of a Separation by Aanchal Malhotra. And this is a book that I love so much and will definitely recommend wholeheartedly. Such a beginner-friendly book, and just so important because it gives you an understanding of like India and the partition and Pakistan and Bangladesh and how that happened, and of the people. Because what it is about is essentially, it is Aanchal Malhotra basically met people and got to hear of their stories of their lives before the partition, and then during the partition and after the partition, through material memory, which is all the things that they carried with them during the partition. And she has said, of course, that there were very privileged people who got to carry like materials with them, but this could be very simple, such as like a tumbler to drink water, or like, you know, like I don't know, like things like someone brought like a mang tika. So like the if you see the cover here, it is her grandmother who carried like this piece of jewelry that you put on your Mang here, and it's just, those are the sort of things that they talk about, and it's just so well done. I loved all of these stories that she kind of told. They're so heartwarming, but also so painful to read, but in just the nicest way, because you get to know about history through its people. And yeah, I just thought that it's really, really good and would highly, highly recommend to like everyone. And since we are on the topic of partition, I thought that we could talk about Kashmir, and a book that I read last year, I think, was this book called Behold I Shine, which is basically by Franny Manekshaw, who was a journalist, or is a journalist, not too sure about what she's doing right now, but she wrote this book about Kashmir, and essentially about the narrative of women and children, because you hear of the men, but not so much from the women and children, so you get to hear more of their perspective in this book. And I really, really liked it, because she gave you a little bit of a primer of what is happening in Kashmir, as well, so you got to understand that in total, but you also got to understand the perspective of the women and the children. So again, very, very beginner friendly, very easy to read, very small as well, so would definitely recommend if you are interested in that. The next book is Persepolis by Marjan Satrapi, and this is a graphic novel of her life, and I just thought that it is so interesting because it's a graphic novel, so it's really simple to read, but it's also just such a moving book. I have unfortunately just read like one volume of it. There are like 4 volumes which are put together in one book, but it's still just so good. It's basically about the author's life growing up in Iran, and when the whole revolution kind of took place and she had to leave and she moved to France, and what that was like, and just the whole, like, how she saw her country change from where it was to what it became, and just like her journey as well as to like where she was and what she became, and I just thought that it is so good, and it's so beginner friendly because it is a graphic novel, so it's told to you in like pictures, and it's really, really wonderfully done. Would highly recommend. So yeah. Now moving on to self-help, which I know is a huge part of like nonfiction, but it's not quite a sort of genre that I read a lot. However, a book that I would definitely recommend is The Habit of Winning by Prakash Iyer. This is his first book that came out, I would like to say, in 2010, but I really, really love it. It's basically like stories, and it's not a very, I've described this in another video as not to be very prescriptive but descriptive, and by that I mean is that like he lets you take your own lessons from the story. Like he tries to give you the lessons, but he also like lets you like dwell on upon it. So he tells you a story of a certain thing that happened, and then like he's like, okay, now you see what you can come up with. That's something which I really liked about this, and then of course he's come up with a lot of other books as well, so would recommend those. But this is a book that like I really, really like, and I sort of go back to it sometimes. I think it's here somewhere. Yeah, it's up there. I can't really reach it. But yeah, I pick it up occasionally, read like a story, and then go like, but yeah, that's one. And number 2 is, and the last book that I have to recommend to you is a book that I have not actually read, but my mother has read, and pretty much all of my friends have read, all my bookish friends have read, and they highly recommend it, which is Atomic Habits, which is basically about habit building and habit changing and all of that sort of stuff. It's written by James Clear, and all of them swear by it, so I'm gonna recommend it to you. I hope to read it soon and maybe do a fun video with regards to it. Let's see how that goes. But yeah, I think that it's really good, and I've heard that it is extremely beginner friendly and will be extremely helpful and useful as well. So there we go. Those are the 12 books, and I think those were like 5 tips as well that I gave you, 5-6 tips that I gave you as well. So I hope that this helps you with your journey to read more nonfiction books. If you have any recommendations as a person who consumes nonfiction books please do let me know down in the description as to what your recommendations are for beginners. Or just generally, and if you are going to pick up any of these books, do let me know down in the comments. And that's legit it. I hope that you have a great experience reading books and enjoying yourself. And I don't know what I'm saying anymore, so I'm just gonna go now. But if you like this video, do give it a thumbs up and like subscribe and hit the bell icon and all of that sort of shit. But I'm just gonna go now. Okay, bye.